Hello and welcome back to the channel. Firstly, if this is the second or third time you've seen one of my videos, that is definitely the universe telling you that you need to smash that subscribe button. Last year I had S&C coach Rob Watson on the channel to discuss strength and conditioning for endurance athletes. That video got lots of great feedback, so I thought it would be best to get him back on, but this time to talk specifically about benefits for cyclists. This is the first of two videos we filmed on a ride before Christmas, but if you haven't seen that previous video, I'll leave a link in the description below. Also, if you have any questions for Rob about strength and conditioning, leave them in the comments. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm out with Rob. Last time he was on the channel we talked about strength training for endurance athletes, but today I wanted to speak to him a little bit more about the benefits specifically for cyclists. We're going to give you the the 5 top tips or 5 benefits of strength training.
5 top benefits of strength training for cyclists.
Cool, and let's get into it.
The first one basically is health, general health. Cycling, for all the benefits that you get from cycling, it is one of the most unnatural movements you're possibly going to do when you engage in a sport. You're sat down the whole time, you're basically in a crunch position, a hunch position. There's no loading going through your bones, through your joints. So one of the issues there is if you continually cycle and you do nothing else, you reduce your bone density, so your body doesn't regenerate the bone in your body, and you end up basically with a reduced bone density. The main areas around that are in your hips, so your pelvis, and in your lower back, which long term can cause some serious health issues. So it's really important that strength training can target those areas and make sure that you're a healthy adult and a healthy athlete basically. Alongside that is posture as well. So again, when you're in a hunch position, and as most of us do, we're always sat down in front of a laptop for work, as most people are a lot of the time, especially at the moment, and you do replicate that when you're doing your exercise on the bike. So you basically sat down, you're in a flex position in your hip, your knees are flexed the whole time, so you become very inflexible, and you also gain a lot of weakness. It's not really possible, but you also become weak in certain areas such as your glutes, hamstrings, your lower back. So there's a lot of weaknesses which need to be addressed, and again, that can lead to injury, it can lead to long-term adaptation, which isn't going to help you cycling either. So when you're hunched over, it means you've got constricted chest, your diaphragm can't quite open up, and it's a little bit limited in terms of how you bring in oxygen. So there's been some evidence to show that it can limit the amount of oxygen you bring in, which as an endurance athlete and as a cyclist is obviously a bit of a negative.
So what was benefit number 2?
So the next benefit was cycling economy, which basically is the amount of oxygen you use to put out a certain power output. So let's say if you're cycling at 200 watts, it's the amount of oxygen you need to fuel that power output. So essentially, by doing strength training, you're going to adapt the muscle fibers that you have in your muscles. Basically, what we have is we've got 3 definitions of the muscle fibers. There's slow twitch, which is fast, which is a type 1, we've got type 2A and type 2X. Now what strength training does is it converts the muscle fiber from type 2X, which is the short explosive stuff that like a jumper would use, for example, or a 100-meter sprinter, into type 2A, which is more fatigue resistant. Now with that, the strength training actually increases the efficiency of both type 2A and the type 1 fibers, so they become more efficient, they're more resistant to fatigue, which means you can basically put out the same power for less oxygen cost. So essentially, when you're cycling at lower intensities, you're using less oxygen. The way that transfers into racing and into high performance is when you are making a big effort and then you're recovering, is it takes you less oxygen to actually recover at a certain power output, so to stay in the pack, for example, which means the rest of the oxygen that you're taking in can go to refueling, to replenishing energy stores for the next attack, or for the next corner, for the next thing you're going to follow, or if you're trying to make a breakaway.
I think that's really important, isn't it? In especially I do a lot of crit racing myself, that being able to repeat that effort over and over again, and that sustainability, meaning I think if I look back at some of the power data from previous races, sometimes my biggest sprint has been at the beginning of the race, trying to get into the pack, and then I've not been able to repeat that. It's just as I'm going on, it's getting the actual max like kind of power I'm putting out is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
That kind of leads into one of the benefits, which is around the maximal force production that you have. So moving on to that third benefit is that max force production, rate of force development, and basically your maximum power. So that top end explosive ability, which is generally your anaerobic abilities on a bike. So that example you've used in terms of sprinting or accelerating out of corners, chasing brakes, that type of thing, you'll be stronger at the start because obviously you're fresher. What you're trying to do is, if it takes 600 watts to kick out of a corner, for example, but your max is 1000 watts, you're then hitting 60% of that maximum every time you're kicking out of a corner. If you're able to increase your maximal force production through strength training or through repeat sprint training or whatever method you choose to do, and you manage to raise that to 1200 watts, for example, every time you're kicking out the corner at 600, it's a lesser amount of your maximum force production. So you're going to be basically working at a lower intensity to kick out of that corner, for example, or to kick out of that brake, which will then transfer into having more strength at the end of the race because you're using less of your higher energy stores at the start of the race, basically.
What about benefit number 4? What's the fourth benefit?
Benefit number 4 is lactate threshold. So essentially the key thing here is you're looking at that there's loads of things which can there's loads of advantages which contribute to maximum lactate threshold. One of the things I'm going to focus on is joint stability, which is quite a quiet unknown sort of benefit of it. So when you're pushing force through the pedals, you're basically pushing it through your hip, your knee and your ankle, and there's force lost there. So basically every time you're pushing through the pedal, the force is going through the kinetic chain. So when you get down to the knee's in the middle of that chain from where you're pushing through the hip and through to the pedal. So your knee may be wobbling side to side. It'd be something which you probably don't even notice, but you may actually even notice it when you're pushing through the pedals, that occasionally your knee will shift. The reason that's happening is because there's a lack of stability in that knee joint, in the tendons, in the ligaments holding that knee in position. So every time you're pushing the force through, what you want the force to do is to get through to the pedal as efficiently as possible, essentially in a straight line. Same as any other mechanics, a straight line will keep the most force, will produce the most force where you want it to go. If you've got a slight lack of strength, then your knee's going to be wobbling slightly. You'll lose some force. When you move that further down the chain to your ankle, you basically got a soft and a sponge at that ankle joint. So stronger tendons, stronger ligaments there will actually make it more efficient to transfer power. So for the same aerobic effort and the same metabolic effort, you are basically putting through more power if you're more stable through the actual joints as well. So that in turn, for the same internal effort, you'll be able to put more power through the pedals and get that to where it needs to be to make you go faster.
And the final benefit, or not final benefit, but the final one we're talking about?
The 5 that we're talking about. So the final one was just was maintaining muscle mass. One of the key things with endurance athletes is as you get older, you tend to lose muscle mass quite simply. The fast twitch fibers tend to reduce within your body. One thing that strength training does is maintain those, and it maintains the ability to create force quickly. One thing you'll see generally if you cycle a lot around wherever you cycle is that the older riders tend to be very good at doing long distances and riding a specifically lower threshold power, but they can do that for longer. That's because as you get older, you become more efficient at using your slow twitch muscle fibers, and you actually gain more slow twitch muscle fibers because of the amount of training and the volume that you do. Now that's fine if you want to ride distances and ride them relatively good pace but not quite high intensity enough. If you're actually racing and you're getting older, then you need to keep that high intensity there, you need to keep that anaerobic capacity, keep that strength there, and make sure that you're able to push the power through the pedals at the maximum rate. And that's what strength training will do for you in terms of the adaptation as you're getting older.
So you're kind of saying is like, actually if you're still a competitive cyclist, then the older you are, the more likely you need to be doing strength exercising. You need to be kind of, and probably best is to kind of start that early and continue that through.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody that's anywhere near 30 needs to start strength training because that's when you tend to start losing muscle mass. If you're not strengthening and you're just aerobic training, you will naturally be losing muscle mass because you're not challenging your body in the right way. You're not putting that external stress on your muscles to essentially maintain or to grow slightly. So you will lose that muscle mass, you lose that top end ability, you lose that explosive ability. Yes, you'll be very good at riding along at a very set high rate, but at the same time, a lot of mass start racing, cyclocross, crit racing for example, leading road racing requires those explosive efforts, so you need to keep that strength there in your muscle.
So again, that was a really interesting video. Next time we're going to be talking about the 3 common mistakes that people make when adding strength and conditioning to their training plans. And again, I think that's going to be a great video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.